Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Books, Girls, and Purrs. And today we're going to discuss James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. This is comprised of 2 letters James Baldwin wrote to his nephew, and it's around the centennial of the Emancipation Proclamation. And the author writes how America is celebrating 100 years too soon. This is a book, although it's very short, that I would like to be taught in high school. It just seems like a very important, necessary work that maybe should be taught around classes that are discussing American history, I think, to contextualize everything that's gone on. So it's just one of those works that's just really important, and also is another one of his works that makes it so apparent how impactful, how powerful his words are. He just has a way of saying things that are just so pointed. I don't have his skills to express it any further. It's definitely going to be one of those books that I need to make an effort to maybe read once a year. This is a reread for me. I have read this before, but it's been a while. And by the time I picked it up, I did read it and also hybrid read it. So I would read this and also listen to an audio. And I quickly read it 3 more times because it's just a very powerful work. And with that said, I am going to read some notes because I don't want to talk too incoherently. And I want to do justice to the work because it's such a powerful and important work. And so the author does write in an intimate and confessional way that contextualizes the stark reality of America, like celebrating 100 years of freedom too soon, through personal connections, such as his belief that his father believed the terrible, like, racist ideology that was hurled at him. And that's something that the author discusses really early on. And I felt like he's just saying that the way his father was treated, yeah, just him actually believing it is like really disheartening. And for someone to say that, and also to know that these are letters that are written to his nephew, so you are getting these really like intimate things that maybe if he didn't write them out and talk about them, maybe he wouldn't have published them. I would like to know more about why he published this, because it's so vulnerable. But also his spiritual epiphany that caused him to leave the church, and how oppression reaps cycles of violence. And when he wrote that, it reminded me of another one of his works. And so I'm going to kind of put a pin in that and just remember to discuss it at the wrap up for February. I think I'm going to have like 2 different videos because with everything that I read by this author and other authors that created like nods to his work, there are just certain connections that I made through this particular writing to his fictional work that actually put certain things into a context that made more sense to me, or made me empathize with certain characters more, if that makes any sense. What else? I don't want to forget anything. I think that's it for my quick summary. So I'm going to dig into a couple of things that are a bit of like a spoiler talk. So if you haven't read The Fire Next Time, pick it up. It's one of those books that's very short because it's only 2 letters, and it's worth reading over and over again. And I think all his work is sadly still relevant. So there's that. James Baldwin talks about his brother and how he has barely survived what America has done to him. And I don't know anything about James Baldwin's personal life or his family's, so I'm hoping I'll find a documentary or something, because that was just like a brief mention, but I don't have any other knowledge about that. And the author goes on to talk about how America was created in a way that's set up to hurt people of color. And he said something, I had to write it down because I didn't want to mess it up. But he wrote how white supremacists treat people of color like they're invisible, and people who refuse to see the issues will deny its existence. And that just continues to actually support a structure of white supremacy. And I appreciated how the author wrote that, and how white supremacists are frozen in time, and that they must know history in order to be free of that. And also, as long as you know your own history, you will never be lost. And so I thought that was really important for him to point out, especially right now when we're living in a time where in certain states of America, books are being banned. I mean, even like the state of Florida, there are books being pulled out of teachers' rooms, and there are these bans. I think there's just this ban that went into law. I don't know if I'm saying all the legal jargon correctly, but in the state of Tennessee, the wording is like to criminalize transgender people. So, I mean, there's just a lot of like hateful rhetoric and stuff like that that's being put into law. So I think these are just examples of how the American system is set up to hurt people, and that's very much what rings true in James Baldwin's work. And with that said, on page 57 of James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time, he wrote, "We human beings now have the power to exterminate ourselves. This seems to be the entire sum of our achievement. We have taken this journey and arrived at this place in God's name. This, then, is the best that God, the white God, can do. If that is so, then it is time to replace him." Replace him with what? And so then he goes on to talk from there. And so I also really appreciate how James Baldwin also goes on to talk about like the racket that is the college education system, as well as how that feeds into like the capitalist narrative. And within the same breath, he also talks about how the recruitment into church is similar to the recruitments of the street life, and he really saw a connection with that. But also how when he had friends that were Jewish, how his father acted really violent to that information. And it was these little elements, or not little elements, all these details, all these instances that were happening in his life that made him fall away from the church. And at one point he has an epiphany, and he thinks that, well, if God exists and it's this white God, then why would this white God allow all these terrible things to happen to black people on earth in America? And so I just appreciated that although it seems like there's all these different elements, he always makes such a clear connection, and they seem to just like cascade and follow right into whatever the thesis is of what he's trying to get at, and he does that really well. And with that said, I think that's the end of my spoiler chat review of The Fire Next Time. I loved it. I recommend it. pick yourself a copy and go to the library. I use the Libby app, so that's a library app, because there's also an audio that's available, and his work will always be worth a read. So that's all I have to say for now, and I'll see you next time.